Hello everyone, this is Marshall Official. Welcome back to another video on the Russo-Ukrainian War. We have a lot of very major updates for this video, so let's get right on into it, starting with the off-the-battlefield news. Major news today, Putin drafts 160,000 men into Russian army despite peace talks. Vladimir Putin has ordered 160,000 men to be drafted into the Russian army by midsummer despite claiming to be working towards peace with Ukraine. Putin basically said that Zelensky he can't make a peace deal with Zelensky because Zelensky is illegitimate. He's not a real leader. He's referring to the elections because Zelensky canceled the elections, so he's in there past his term was over. So because of that, which is legal under Ukraine's constitution, but Vladimir Putin is saying that makes him illegitimate. I can't talk to him. Basically, is what he's saying. So if we want peace, put a new guy in there. Is what he's basically saying, or at least hold an election so he can get reelected. Is what Putin is saying. The record high conscription drive suggests Russia is planning to boost its ranks after a month of sustained losses and trying to expel the last key troops from Kursk, and now is a slow grind forward into Ukraine's east. The men are 1835. Each time Russia has grown its army, its defense ministry has denied any link to the Ukraine conflict and claimed that the conscription would not be sent into active combat. That is, of course, a lie. They have been sent into active combat, obviously. But however, Russian forces have been very heavily relying on volunteers only, relying on very heavy, like very large payment. So they're getting very high paychecks as an incentive to join the Russian armies. Russian forces have been getting enough volunteers to maintain the front line. But bear in mind, there's also news. According to Zelensky and other Ukrainian officials, Russia is preparing for an all-out major offensive to come at some point in the near future. Some Ukrainians claim it won't happen until midsummer. Zelensky says it's right around the corner. So if it happens at all, it's going to happen. It's going to happen sometime between the next couple weeks till midsummer, something like that, if it happens at all. But we know Russian forces are getting enough volunteers to maintain the current amount of men on the front line. But to launch an all-out offensive, they need more men. This could be a sign that Russian forces are in fact preparing for an all-out offensive. They could send 160. How would these men be used? Well, these are 160,000 new conscripts. These men would be sent to the front line to hold the front line, while they pull experienced volunteers off the front and send them wherever the offensive is going to happen. Zelensky claims it's going to be Sumy and Kharkiv. So they'll take the experienced men off of this front, send them over here for this offensive, and they'll send those conscripts here. So that's all speculation, but Russian forces are now drafting a lot more men to boost their ranks. Trump accused Zelensky of trying to back out of the mineral deal. Just to sum it up, Zelensky pretty much said that Ukraine will not sign the mineral deal in its current state. He also said that Ukraine will not recognize American aid as debt. So that's that could be a bad thing for him to say that, because he's pretty much saying all that stuff you gave us, we're not paying it back. We're just not going to recognize that. We're not going to recognize debt on any of that. And Trump's not going to like that one bit. That sums up why Trump would say this, because Zelensky said we're not going to recognize U.S. aid as debt, we're not paying it back, and we're not going to sign the mineral deal as it currently stands. So, in other words, Zelensky's pretty much saying, screw debt, is what he's pretty much saying. We're not paying it back. So it's a no. And Trump doesn't like that one bit. That sums it up. Russia accuses Ukraine of attacking energy sites. That's very obviously true. Ukraine has been targeting multiple fuel depots, refineries, and pumping stations all over Russia. They've been targeting them with drones all over Russia, Western Russia at least. So yeah, that is very true. The problem with that is that they're supposedly working towards an energy ceasefire, where they'll agree to. It's not a ceasefire for the whole front. It's an agreement. It's, okay, we want to, where Russia and Ukraine will say, we won't attack your energy sites. You won't attack our energy sites. So in other words, no more attacking each other's energy. Just leave the energy alone. We'll stop attacking each other's energy. Russia says they're ready to sign that. Ukraine has not. Ukraine says they're not ready to sign an energy ceasefire because so far they're doing pretty good at attacking Russia's. They're doing pretty good at attacking Russia's fuel depots. So why would they want to sign a deal that says we can't do that? So obviously that's, and of course Trump might look at that and say, well, Ukraine, you have to sign that. We're working towards a peace here. You have to sign that. And then Ukraine will say no, and tensions will continue to rise. So, but yes, the statement that Russia saying this is happening is Yeah, it's been happening. Yeah, it's very true statement right here. On the other hand, Trump is also not happy with Putin, as he claims that Putin is intentionally pushing back the ceasefire agreement. He's intentionally dragging this out, making it way more difficult than it has to be. He says, "I was disappointed in a certain way with some of the things that were said over the last day or two, having to do with Z, because he is considering Zelensky not credible. He's supposed to be making a deal with him, whether you like him or don't like him. So I wasn't happy with that." And he said he was pissed off. So Trump is not happy that Putin seems to be intentionally pushing back a ceasefire and pushing back a peace deal over these preconditions for a ceasefire, like get rid of Zelensky. Like these are like that's a big precondition to just have a ceasefire. Like that's a pretty serious thing for him to demand like that. So Trump is not happy with that. So that is all the news from off the front lines, and we do have major news coming from the front lines as well. Lots of changes over the last 3 days. So up here on the Karasumi front, Russian forces have captured the town of Vasilivka. This town was taken pretty much with no resistance. Ukraine just abandoned it, so this town was captured, however. Russian forces also captured a tree line to the west of Vasilivka in the Sumy region. As for the Sumy and Kharkiv region, Russian forces captured this area in Sumy right here, and in the Kherson region, they captured this border crossing area right here, as well as multiple tree lines. The last part of Kherson Ukraine still controls on this part of the front line is just Oleshnya. That is it. After this falls, the front line here will have reached the border. At this point, Ukraine's other part of the front of the Kherson region down here is now the larger section that is still left. The Russian forces have advanced here and they have captured most of Guevo, but Ukrainian forces still control a few blocks right here and some forest patches that are part of Guevo. But the front line is moving in this part of the front line, and after Guevo finally falls, only Gornal will be left as Ukrainians' last town on the southern part. So up here we have Oleshnya, down here we have Gornal, and that is it for the Kherson region, really. Ukraine's very lopsided and not necessary incursion into the Belgrade region has continued to just go nowhere. Over the last 3 days, we have had no updates whatsoever. The Ukrainian forces have continued to attempt to try and take the towns of Demidovka and Popovka, but they've been pushed back every single time. The best they have been able to do is push into Demidovka, but this was days ago, and nothing has happened since then. And here's to the south, we have no changes down here as well. They have not even been able to enter the border village of Polise. So nothing has happened down here, but they still technically have captured Lipsy. But this is not even a town. If you can just zoom in, there's not even a building. So this does not count as a town. Moving on further to the south, the real big news is coming from the Oskil front. Russian forces have begun a seemingly major offensive on this part of the front line, or at least a significant offensive, medium-sized offensive, I'll say that. Because we have frontline changes from down here to around Kupiansk all the way up to the border. Let's start from the top to the bottom. Up here in Topali, Russian forces advanced and captured this forested patch right here, to the west of Topali. To the south, they have reached up to the Oskil River right here, and have also crossed the Oskil River and continued and have expanded their bridgehead here, capturing these tree lines here to the south, and have just about pushed into the town of Kamyanka, and have also captured this forested patches up here, some sort of sandbank right here. But Kamyanka it's a pretty big village. It reaches all the way up to here. So if Russian forces can capture this, that would be a pretty big victory and a pretty good area for them to house their troops. And if they can capture Kamyanka, this will be the last part of the Oskil front that is still at the river will have fallen Russia. So at that point, if Russian forces take Kamyanka, they will have a continuous front all the way along from the border all the way down to Kupiansk. In other words, the Oskil will have fallen. Near Fyholivka, the Russian forces did previously take this village, but then they lost it. Now Russian forces have been able to capture, not the village, but capture this area to the southwest of it, and push back right there. Russian forces made an advancement right here and captured this forested patch right here. They made another advancement right here around Zapadne and captured this area all up to the highway right over here, as well as pushing over and capturing this small forested patch. And they've made another advancement here again along the highway, pushing towards the town of Kindrashivka, and I'm just about ready to enter it. So this Russian advancements are happening everywhere, and there's also I didn't even mention this part right here in the middle. The big one right here in the middle. Russian forces captured this hilly area right here and a few forested patches. They've captured the town of Krasny Pershe. They've also captured these two major forested patches up here to the north. So Russian forces overall are making significant advances on this part of the front line to the north, the center, and the south. So this front is at this moment very active. Moving on further south for the rest of the Luhansk Kharkiv front, no changes from here, but we do have changes down here in the southern part. Russian forces have made advancements down here where they've captured several forces patches here, made a small little advancement by linking up the northern part and southern part. Russian forces made big advancements here to the west, pushing out this way where they've managed to capture a lot of tree lines, a lot of forested patches. They've pushed right in between the towns of Raposta and Katerinivka. The Russian forces seem to be trying to push through these villages, between these villages and get around them before spinning out in two directions to capture much larger ground. So this is a big deal right here. Russian forces made another advance to the south of Yampolivka, pushing south towards Torets. This is a hot spot right here. This area is one of Ukraine's most successfully defended areas on the front line. So this part has not been able to be taken for a very long time. Russian forces could be trying to, at some point, make an effort to capture these two villages. These two villages are big symbols for Ukraine's defensive ability because despite this front being here for years, the Russian forces have not been able to enter these two villages. This is a very strong defensive position for the Ukrainians. They do not want to lose that. Severus, we have no changes. Chasiv Yar, we have no changes. Turets, we have no changes. So the Ukrainians seem to be holding back here because we have no changes from the last 3 days. No changes from this part of the front line. Russian forces have made an advancement and pushed towards the towns of Suka Balka and Valentinivka. After capturing these two villages here, they are now pushing northward towards these two villages. Around the highway, no changes here. Around the Polk-Rols front, we have some changes. We have an insignificant Russian advancement right here in Lysivka, just minor, not a big deal. And the one place where the Ukrainians are still seeing some success is to the west of Polk-Rols, in this area right here. This part of the front line, the Ukrainians are still seeing we still have Ukrainian counterattacks, and they are still trying to push Russian forces back. Russian forces have been almost pushed out of Kotliny. They've also been pushed out, not out of, but they've been pushed away from Udakny from the southern direction. Russian forces, as the Ukrainian forces at their best, may be able to push Russian forces back to about a line like about right here, and they'll lose the ground up here. But overall, the Russian forces will probably not give up this highway, but these highway, is this a highway? Railway. It's a highway, it's both. It's a highway and a railway. They will not give up these positions around the highway and railway without a fight. They will not give up these positions without a fight because they are very vital. If Ukrainian forces can retake this highway and retake this railway, that will reopen these directions for bringing supplies to Polk-Rols, which right now can only be done from the northern direction. Here to the south, Russian forces managed to capture the town of Preobrazhenka. And they've captured a lot of ground around it, like a big chunk of ground. From here, Russian forces are about to enter the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. They are just 1.8 miles away from it. That is a huge deal. And they've also been able to push into the town of Bodanivka here to the south. Clashes are happening around Uspinivka, but no changes there so far. Russian forces made a little clearing in the pocket right here to the south. This tree line right here and this tree line right there. Not a big deal, but another Russian advancement. Russian forces made a decent-sized advancement right here to the south and pushed into the town of Rozliv and captured the majority of it. Only this western part still remains in this area here, out here to the west. Again, a lot of tree lines here fell as well. Russian forces made another significant advancement here to the northeast of Veliki Novosilke and captured several tree lines right here. Another Russian advancement happened right over here, where they pushed into the town of Vesele. Russian forces seem to be trying to push towards the border in this area right here, towards Bahatar, and also towards Komar. These towns right here on their way towards the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. That is all from that part of the front line, but the last part of the front line is over here in western Zaporizhia, where there has been a small Russian offensive happening for some time now. Russian forces managed to capture the town of Zhabaki. They've also managed to capture some ground here to the southeast, and also to the southwest of Orikhiv. And that is your entire front update. Russian forces are now pressing the front on multiple areas. They've obviously regained the momentum, very clearly regained momentum. The one place where Ukraine is still seeing success, at least as of right now, is here around to the southwest of Polk-Rols, where their counterattacks do still continue around this forward Russian position right here around the highway and the railway. But elsewhere, we have no other Ukrainian advancements. I'm sure we'll still see some, But right now, the only place where Ukraine still holds the advantage is right here on this part of the front line, from here down to here. This is the only part where Ukraine still has a clear advantage, from what we can see. But everywhere else, Russian forces hold the advantage, and they are on the attack. Russian forces are significantly pressuring the front in four main places: the Oskil, the Sumy front, western Zaporizhia, and southern Donetsk. These are the four areas where Russian forces are making significant pushes to try and capture as much ground as possible. And bear in mind, this is all possibly a foreshadow to a much larger Russian offensive coming in the near future. But we will have to wait and see what happens with that. So thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys next time. Make sure you subscribe, hit the bell notification, and press the like button, leave a comment. I will see you guys next time. Bye.